They laughed when he received the old car, his so-called inheritance. "Junk," they said. His father must have lost his mind. Meanwhile, his stepbrother signed property papers and raised a glass of champagne. Marcus stood quietly, holding a single rusted car key. Weeks later, when he finally turned that key, what the engine revealed didn't just change his life. It uncovered a secret his father had taken to the grave. Before we continue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us share more true and inspiring stories like this one. Now let's begin. You want the truth? The room smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish. Marcus sat motionless as the lawyer read the will line by line. Ethan leaned back, uninterested. Charles tapped his pen impatiently. When the list of properties and companies ended, both brothers smiled, already imagining their fortune. Then came Marcus's turn. One item, a car, an old car that barely worked. The lawyer hesitated and repeated it, as if to confirm he'd read it right. Marcus blinked once, jaw tight, hands clasped to hide the tremor. Charles scoffed. "Scrap metal!" Ethan laughed louder than needed. From the hallway a whisper floated. "Cold." Another answered, "He got nothing." The lawyer ignored them. Marcus simply nodded and stood. No outburst. The silence carried weight, a kind only he could feel. Outside the sun hung pale and the wind felt dry. The car waited by the curb, its paint dull gray, its mirror cracked like a weary grin. Marcus ran a thumb across the hood, tracing through dust. The scent of old fuel and worn rubber lingered, along with a faint trace of his father's cologne. The tow truck driver squinted. "You sure about this?" Marcus said yes. Two teens filmed on their phones. "Bro, check out that wreck." A woman passing by shook her head. "What a waste." Marcus kept calm, his expression steady. He watched the straps tighten around the car, checked them twice. At his apartment, he guided the tow truck into a narrow space behind the building. Mrs. Lang, his elderly neighbor, leaned over her balcony in a robe. "Your father left you that?" He nodded. "Then treat it gently," she said softly. "Grief makes hands careless." Night settled early. Marcus wiped the windshield with a damp cloth, then sat in the driver's seat. The springs pressed into his back. He turned the key, a rough click. The engine sputtered, then fell silent. He didn't swear. He just listened. A distant train horn echoed. He opened the glove compartment. Inside, a brittle map, an old parking stub, no letter. He shut it slowly, exhaling. The sting in his eyes surprised him. He missed his father, even with all the distance between them. Resting his arms on the steering wheel, he released a long breath. Across the alley, a young boy rolled past on a scooter. "That yours?" the boy asked. "Yes," Marcus replied. "Looks haunted," the kid said. Marcus almost smiled. "Maybe it is." He locked the car, slipped the key into his pocket, and looked up at the pale moon. Fine, let them laugh. Tomorrow he'd find someone who understood old engines. That night Marcus slept with the window slightly open, just enough to hear the metal cool. By morning, sunlight found him easing the car out inch by inch, one hand on the fender, shoulder pressed to the cold surface. The alley smelled of damp concrete and leftover fry oil. He checked the straps again and motioned for the tow truck to move. "She's tired," the driver muttered. "So am I," Marcus replied, almost smiling. They pulled up to a small brick garage with a hand-painted sign. Inside the car club, the air was thick with oil, coffee, and the faint buzz of a radio playing blues. A tall woman in a denim shirt wiped her hands on a rag. "What are we working with?" she asked. Her tag read Laya. Marcus kept it brief. "My father's car. Barely runs." Laya leaned under the open hood, inhaling lightly as if scent could tell a story. "Not junk," she said, "but not simple either." She gestured toward the back. "Frank, come take a look." Frank approached quietly, studied the chassis stamp and the small plate near the firewall, then stepped back as if viewing a piece of art. "Huh," he said, offering no explanation. Laya noticed. "Well," she murmured, "let's not startle it." They moved slowly around the car. Laya traced a faint crease beneath the worn paint. "This kind of line only appears when someone once cared," she said. A young technician rolled a cart closer. Pull the plugs? Laya nodded. Their movements were small but sure, a quiet language shared by people who listen to machines. At the coffee station, a couple whispered. "I've seen that grill in a book," the man said. "You always say that," the woman replied, though her eyes stayed fixed on the car. Frank slid under the front with a flashlight. "Original control arms," he called out. Hand stamped. He asked for a mirror, angled it deep, and read a series of numbers in a low tone. Leia repeated them softly. The room went still. "That matches an early run," Frank said finally. No excitement, just a simple fact placed on the table. Heat rose to Marcus's face. Not victory, but relief. He hadn't imagined the pull that brought him here. He rested his thumb on the cracked steering wheel, letting the grit ground him. Laya asked to remove the back seat. The bolts resisted, groaning as they turned. Dust lifted into the air. An envelope slipped out from the springs, his name written on it in his father's rough handwriting. The room paused. Marcus tucked the envelope into his jacket without opening it. He wanted the truth from the car before any words told him what to feel. They kept working without drama. Laya brushed a badge clean with a soft toothbrush. The technician eased a rusted bolt loose, 1/4 turn at a time. Frank made quiet notes in neat, steady handwriting. Marcus fetched the trays and held the lamp steady. The radio faded beneath the soft murmur of voices and the faint tick of cooling metal. Two teenagers pressed their faces to the window. "Dude, that's the one from the rumor," one whispered. "You live on rumors," the other replied. By noon, the form beneath the grime began to show purpose. Frank unwrapped a manual, comparing each measurement carefully. Once, twice, then again. His tone remained calm. "If this is what I think it is, it deserves to be seen. Not hidden in a lot." Laya caught Marcus's gaze. "Next step is verification," she said. He nodded. The envelope in his jacket tapped against his ribs like a reminder. He didn't open it. The truth was already unfolding. He let out a slow breath. Verification took a week. The car stayed behind a rope, half dismantled, half revived. Experts arrived and left, speaking in low tones around it like doctors at a quiet bedside. They measured, photographed, and studied the paint layers. Each time Marcus entered, the talk paused, then softened again. Frank managed the calls. Laya handled the documentation. Marcus waited, helping where possible, passing wrenches, wiping metal dust from his sleeves. Nights came quietly. He reread the notes on the envelope, tracing the handwriting without opening it, memorizing the curve of his father's M. It felt as if the old man still had something to say, but wanted him to earn the silence first. One morning, a museum curator arrived in a dark coat. He didn't waste words. "This is it," he said after a slow walk around the car. A 1967 Dea prototype, missing for decades. "It shouldn't exist." He turned to Marcus. "Do you realize what that means?" Marcus nodded. "Not yet." The curator smiled. "You will. Within days, word spread. Car magazines called it the ghost find. Reporters gathered outside the club's doors, some chasing the story, others chasing the price. Marcus ignored them. He told Frank to finish the restoration and went home to his apartment, still smelling of oil and coffee. That night, he finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. "To my son, Marcus, this car carried me through debt, doubt, and humiliation. People saw rust. I saw survival. If you're reading this, you've learned that lesson yourself. Don't sell it too quickly. Let it breathe. Let it teach. When your brothers forget what matters, remind them, with patience, not pride." The handwriting faltered halfway through the final line. Marcus folded the letter carefully, as if it might crumble. At dawn, he returned to the club. The team had fully uncovered the car. Sunlight caught the metal, revealing silver beneath faded paint. The museum soon made an offer. A permanent display under Marcus's name with monthly royalties. Enough for a quiet life. He accepted, on one condition, that his father's name appear on the plaque, too. At the exhibit's unveiling, flashbulbs burst across the room. Laya nudged him. "You just went from broke to booked for interviews." He laughed once. "I'll pass." In one corner, Two men whispered near the rope barrier. "That's the guy they mocked at the will reading," one said. The other replied, "Who's laughing now?" Marcus paid them no attention. He ran a fingertip along the polished curve of the hood, cool under the display lights. The same machine that once sputtered and failed now purred softly, alive again. Weeks later, the checks began to arrive. Steady, clean, enough to rebuild without showing off. He bought a small house outside the city, repaired the fence himself, and spent afternoons teaching local kids how to fix old bikes. He never mentioned the museum money. The fortune didn't matter. What counted was the proof that real worth hides where pride never looks. By the end of the third month, he parked his pickup by the museum steps. Inside, visitors moved slowly, faces glowing in the car's reflection. Watching them, Marcus realized his father hadn't been teaching him about engines. He had been teaching him how to see. 6 months passed. The headlines faded, but Marcus's life stayed calm. The museum payments came quietly, enough to support the youth garage he opened in an old warehouse near his father's neighborhood. It smelled of oil, metal, and fresh starts. Kids from the block called it the workshop. One rainy afternoon, as Marcus showed a boy how to tighten a bolt evenly, a black sedan pulled up. Two men stepped out in tailored suits, Ethan and Charles. No laughter this time. Rain streaked their collars. Their eyes carried the dull shine of people who had run out of excuses. Charles spoke first. "We need help." Marcus wiped his hands with a rag, movements calm. "What happened?" he asked. Ethan hesitated. "Bad loans, taxes. The company's gone." The garage grew quiet. A few kids pretended not to hear. Marcus nodded once. "Sit." He poured 3 coffees into chipped mugs. Steam rose between them, carrying the scent of oil and swallowed pride. Ethan finally said, "We were wrong." Marcus didn't rush to answer. He watched the rain slide slowly down the window. "Dad warned you," he said quietly. "Money without meaning burns fast." Charles stared at the floor. "You going to turn your back?" Marcus shook his head. "He told me to help if you ever lost your way." He handed them folders, paperwork, schedules, lists of repairs. "You start Monday. No titles. Just work," Ethan frowned. "You're hiring us?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm giving you a place to rebuild something real." They didn't argue. They returned the next week, early, silent. At first their movements were stiff, untrained for labor, but the days reshaped them. By the third week, Charles was under a car, grease on his cheek, joking with a teenager. Ethan managed inventory, steady and focused. One afternoon, Leah stopped by from the museum. She watched the brothers work and smiled. "Didn't think you'd go soft," she said. Marcus shook his head. "Not soft. Just learned what value means." Word spread around town that the Reed brothers had turned the old workshop into a community space. Parents stopped by with food. Kids brought in broken bikes. And the same neighbors who once whispered now nodded in quiet respect. Months later, an invitation arrived from the museum. An anniversary event. The brothers dressed simply and went together. The hall glowed with soft music and polished glass. The old car shone beneath perfect lights. A plaque beneath it read, "Thomas Reed. Legacy. Proof that true wealth is built, not inherited." Ethan touched the plaque. "He'd like this." Marcus replied, "He'd like that we finally understood." They stood there until closing, saying nothing more. When they stepped outside, the night air felt lighter. The old guilt washed away in silence. Marcus turned once, looking back through the glass at the car. It reflected 3 silhouettes. Equal at last. The rust had long been burned away, but its lesson remained. What some call scrap can still bring a family home again. A year later, the workshop buzzed with life. Tools clinked, compressors hissed, and kids argued over engine timing as if it mattered to the world. Marcus moved between work bays, sleeves rolled up. The same calm rhythm he'd kept since that day at the lawyer's office. He never boasted about the car or the money. He let the sound of honest work speak for him. The once faded garage walls now wore clean coats of white and blue paint. A mural stretched across one side. his father's face outlined in silver, with the words, "Build, don't beg." One Saturday morning, Marcus found Ethan showing a group of kids how to change brake pads. The man who once laughed at him now smiled easily, dirt on his hands, patience in his tone. Charles sat in the office, balancing the books and explaining budgets like he finally understood what numbers truly meant. Marcus stepped outside. The city air was warm, the smell of asphalt and fuel mixing with last night's rain. He leaned on the railing, hands rough, gaze steady. Across the street, two women chatted near the bus stop. "That's the guy from the inheritance story," one whispered. "Funny how things turn," said the other. "Those brothers used to have everything. He didn't fight back. He listened." A small smile crossed Marcus's face. Let them talk. The truth didn't need defending anymore. Later that week, the museum requested a new plaque, one honoring Marcus's restoration program. The exhibit now featured photos of the workshop, the kids and his brothers working beside him. The car still gleamed beneath the lights, but the caption had changed. "The Reed Legacy, proof that wisdom lasts longer than wealth." During the ceremony, the curator handed Marcus a microphone. "Would you like to say something?" he asked. Marcus looked over the crowd, reporters, students, and neighbors. He spoke simply. "My father taught me that worth isn't found in what runs smooth, but in what you're willing to rebuild. That's all." The applause was soft and sincere. When the lights dimmed, Marcus stood quietly beside the car. His reflection merged with his father's photo in the glass display. For a moment he could almost hear the old man's voice. "Now you understand," it seemed to say. "Yeah," Marcus whispered. "I do." Outside, the rain began again, tapping gently against the museum windows like quiet applause. Marcus zipped his jacket and walked into the night, city lights stretching ahead. Behind him the car sat still and shining, a relic that had carried a family from arrogance to grace. And just like that, the story ended where it began. With a man, a father's lesson, and a machine that turned mockery into memory. Sometimes what seems worthless hides the greatest legacy. Marcus never chased revenge. He built something that lasted. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need a reminder that humility often speaks louder than pride.